Don't just feel that you have to focus, but your kidney problems, kidney failure, or take frequent to inhibit. Increase liver blood test values in midterm. Your doctor will check them before entering treatment. Most common side effects include stomach pain, diarrhea, difficulty sleeping, and back pain.
You got the diarrhea commercials on.
Ask your doctor about hormone.
You hear that shit?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we were live.
Yeah, we should be.
This is unbelievable, right?
Yeah, we were live.
You're gonna get so much
Watch it look so grainy. Well, I look grainy. I wonder if it's dirty.
I want another option.
Turn that commercial off.
It's not another drug. It's the first and only nasal spray for
I got a flag.
There we go. Right, turn the TV down a little bit. What up? What up, E?
What's up, Bob?
Boy, Bobby, what's good? What's good? MH Hydro, appreciate you for tapping in. We're gonna get fired up in just a second, man. Running a little late today, so I gotta twist me up my blizzy.
Trying to get my chat up, but for some reason that's not as easy as I thought it would be.
Log into one of your other terpenes.
There you go.
Yeah, log into one of your other
I knew my slow ass was missing something.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm logged in under the Business is Blooming account.
I got it now. It's a good bit behind, too. So, happy 420 on a Sunday.
Hoo-yah. Getting after money. What's up, Kinfolk? What up, Slaughterhouse? So I got a chance to catch a little bit of the OG session last night, bro. That shit was pretty dope. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah.
I got some I'm working with putting together some others for the next couple months. Trying to book them a couple months out and get those taken care of so we can be consistent on those and like get back into doing those regularly.
Oh, for sure.
And
who do you want to have? Who do you want to have on that you haven't had yet?
You know, man, that's a tough question for me. Just because I get a lot of like, who would be a perfect interview? Who would I love to talk to? There's a couple breeders that I wouldn't mind having that I have, just generally questions about some of their gear. Tom Hillseeds I'd love to chat with, but he's not really a super internet forward dude. I mean, he does, here and there. He just did a pod not too long ago with somebody, but that'd be a cool one. I've been talking lately. I really want to get somebody on that does analytical testing, that does like terpene testing, cannabinoid testing, things like that. Just because I have a couple questions about things that I'd kind of like to, that I don't have anybody I can really ask. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just things like that, to be honest. There was somebody I thought about not too long ago, and I was like, oh, that would make a great answer to that question. Of course, now that I'm baked and you're asking me, I can't think of who the hell it was. What's that?
I said, what you baked off of?
Man, I think I'm still smoking this Ego Death I've had for a while. Like, this stuff is gnarly. It's of all of my strains, like for the longest time it was a blackout truffle. Like I couldn't go without a jar of blackout truffle. And now it's definitely become the Ego Death because it's got all the best parts of the blackout. Like it's got all of that like mothball-y funky chem thing, but like it's also got like a skunky gassy thing that it's just a well blended old school dank type of profile,
The Ego Death and the Blackout Truffle got the same lineage, some close to it, right?
The Blackout Truffle is in the Ego Death, yeah.
Yeah, get that. Yeah. What up, Dank Panda?
I'm trying to think. Now that I'm on the spot, I'm trying to think about other people. There's got to be some other people that I'd really love to chat with. But what's funny is the people that are always interesting to me aren't the big names. Like they're not,
Right.
I'm not really interested in interviewing people who have already been interviewed 100 times and that don't have much to contribute past this is what I'm working on and this is what's new, like I like for a lot of those chats to be about something bigger. And it's like whether it's flavor discussions or specific discussions about water hash, or, things like that. I do have a couple of homies that I would love to reach out to and have on, like the homie Soilless. I'm sorry. Soil Grown Sal. I'm sorry. Hash maker, dude that originated the rosin tech. And there's a couple other people like that in the hash world that I wouldn't mind having. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of weird for me because like with breeders and stuff, I'm not connected with a ton of big breeders. And maybe one day that's something, as I get more exposure and more chance to be able to talk to other people like that. I mean, I'll talk to anybody, if I feel like somebody has a decent conversation or has something to contribute or, something relevant to talk about weed, man, I'll chat with just about anybody. But,
same here, bro.
I feel like there's some people that are just too big to give a shit, like there's a lot of people that you might think of like, oh, I'd really love to have them on. And then the sort of people that just don't have a community interest and like, they don't really care about pods and shit like that. Like it's just,
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure. No, same here, man. I want to talk to anybody and everybody that wants to, build themselves up or hype their brand up or whatever the case may be, man. I remember when I first started and I had 0 ears, you know what I mean? And it was, I was in your inbox and I was in other people's inbox, and I would get ignored a lot of times, man. So the reason why I, curated the Business is Blooming podcast is to give, no-name people a voice on my podcast. Now, sure, I've had a lot of big names on my show, you know what I mean? But I don't mind talking to Joe Smo either, I think Joe Smo is just as important to the seed creating business as, somebody like In-House Genetics or Mass Medical or yourself, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's important now, man. I think for a very long time in the seed business, man, there's been an oligarch of gatekeepers in the community, man. And it seems like those times are kind of coming to an end because we got a lot of, everyone's breeding now. Everyone's doing a project. Everyone is trying to put out seeds. And like you were saying yesterday in the OG Fest, in the OG Sesh, man, I think that's important, bro, because it reopens up the diversity of the genetic gene pool for us to find flavors that may be quote unquote lost or even just putting so many different flavors together that it end up creating its own type of flavor that we've never even experienced before. So I love the fact that everybody's breeding and seeds are being made.
Dude, for a long time it was easy for them to gatekeep because there was only a handful of people producing seed. And now it's one of those things where anybody can start a seed company. Anybody can sell their seeds on the side. So it's like it's impossible to gatekeep now. Like for a long, long time, especially through the 90s, early 2000s, there were only a few places where you could even get seeds. There was Amsterdam. There was a couple magazines that had, like an order system you could go through, Mark Emery through Canada. Or you went to Canada. There were Canada and Amsterdam were about the only places where you could go to a store, buy seeds, right?
Right. And you had to wait a month or two to even get the seeds if they came.
Right. And even then, if you walked into like Amsterdam in a shop, there wasn't hundreds and hundreds and thousands of strains and breeders. There was probably a little book. It was all in one little book of, 8 or 10 seed companies. They might each have 8 or 10 strains. Back then it was a lot smaller market. And so it was easy to gatekeep really hard. Not just seeds, but like cannabis competitions, all of the, all of that sort of stuff was all super gate kept for years and years and years. All high times, it was all monopolized. They were the only ones that were putting on like big events for 20 years. And so a lot has changed in the last 10 years.
20,
Not even 20, 10 years of just high times isn't even doing cups anymore, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Somebody can correct me. But I don't remember the last time I saw an ad for one.
No, I'm subscribed to High Times magazine. I'm trying to think. I think they just put out, I don't know if they're doing cups, but I think they just put out their top strands of that year.
Oh, yeah. See, they still do stuff like that. But like as far as the cups go, they used to be, until Chalice came around, they were the cup. Now, that's not to say there weren't other competitions. There were smaller regional things, but for a long time, it was like High Times ran the cup scene. There were 1 or 2, 3, 4 places to buy seeds. The last 10, 15 years, that's all changed drastically because now you're seeing more regional cups, more competitions that are like directed at little areas instead of, the Cali Cup and the Colorado Cup. But I will say, man, those days of 2013, 2014, 2015, 16 of the open air drug market cup where you could pop a booth, sell your shit right out in the open, have it judged in the competition and win a cup while you were there. Like those days were awesome, but man,
we're bringing it back here in Virginia, man. But we're speaking about cups. So the King Neptune has been entered into a cup, man. Next week, if you guys want to catch me, I will be in DC at the National Cannabis Fest. Look forward to seeing you guys if you guys can come out. And you may see Supply Chain and myself come home with some hardware for the King Neptune, man. We're very promising, man. We think highly of it. The streets think highly of the King Neptune, man. So you guys will be in Washington, D.C. next week, man. Come smoke a blunt with me.
Go check them out. Yeah, man, I know there's tons of people in that area now. It's another one of those that's like blowing up really hard because they're starting to lax laws between D.C., Virginia, and that area. I'm not sure what it means in a legal sense, absolutely, because I'm not sure they've figured all that out. But it is nice to see. Like I said, I tell people all the time, the best thing that can come from any sort of legislation is them making it a lowest priority for law enforcement.
Right. Facts.
I understand that there's a lot to argue about in how legalization is often implemented, especially as it pertains to the obvious things are like home grows, licensing on a smaller level, not just all the licenses being able to be monopolized by 3 or 4 massive companies. But at the end of the day, any version of legalization is better than any version of non-legalization. Decriminalization is not the same. Decriminalization in some ways makes it easier, in some ways still has a lot of stigma to it, especially as it pertains to things like small home grows and stuff like that. Decriminalization often means you can have a quarter in your pocket and you can get away with it. It doesn't often mean if you got a couple ounces on you, you're still cool. Whereas legalization, there's usually a higher bar as far as what you can have as far as possession, what you can have as far as your home grow and things like that.
For sure. People ask me a lot on the streets and in my podcast, what would I want to see? And I never had a straight answer for them, man. I always just say, just give me the right to grow. But now as I start to, dive into laws and in different states and stuff, man, I think what I want to see is it be decriminalized or legalized. And the reason why I say legalized, because I want to see it like every other market. For instance, if I was a baker, right, and I wanted to bake and sell my goods, I'll just go down to the local municipal, get maybe take some courses for healthcare and stuff like that, right, and food care, and then get my license and I open up and sell my business. I think that's the only way that I want to see it, and I don't know in my lifetime if I ever see it, but I just want it to be a free market like everything else is, like tobacco and alcohol is. Alcohol at one point in time was considered the devil's piss, right?
Booze is the closest comparison, man. Like alcohol, the way if we could get to handle like alcohol nationwide, I'm fine with that. I worked in breweries. I know how easy it is to handle product in a brewery versus when you work in a commercial grow facility. The two things are not same.
Really?
The amount of oversight is ridiculous in commercial cannabis grows because there's still so much stigma behind it. It's safer than alcohol, but people still perceive it as one of those things that we don't know. It's new. We're not aware. And it's like there's still, in so much of it, there's still kind of a kid gloves approach of like, we need to be super over regulatory on the ground so that we can essentially make sure that we're heading off any problems before they start, right? But that's kind of the point, is like, because it's new in so many states, we still don't have a ton of answers for, like, you know, we all know it's safe, right? Because some of us have been doing this our whole lives. But when it comes to proving that to people who don't necessarily care or aren't necessarily pot people, it takes some amount of long-term, look, this has been here. We've had it for a while. It's not a problem. There's no issues. It's not something that's, you know, it's there's not as much harm as the public believes. And then what happens is everybody you know smokes weed. All their mamas, your grandmas, everybody's uncles, everybody's brothers, everybody they know smokes weed. And then it becomes like, oh, okay, well, everybody we know smokes.
They did that here in Virginia. They just took the literature of the alcohol and replaced it with cannabis. You know, the word alcohol with cannabis.
Right.
Now I do agree, man, that maybe it should be some type of regulatories, because, I mean, if for instance, if I'm not mistaken, if you have some type of food eatery, right, the health department can come in anytime and do an inspection, right? I guess with home grows, do you want people just randomly knocking on your door and asking to see your garden? No.
But what you should be able to do is buy a permit. You should be able to go buy a permit. You should be able to get something that says you can grow X amount of plants, and as long as it's a safety situation, it's, you deal. That's, you want to put a pool in your backyard. There's not that much oversight, I mean, having a small home grow, especially now that you're not using like very, very high pressure lights. Most people use LEDs in small home grows now. That changed a lot. Because
the risk of fire,
HID, the risk of fire, especially back in the 90s when we were using things that came off of street lamps and rigging,
hardwiring it and shit,
all kinds of stuff, and it was like that was dangerous. But like, bro, you don't hear about grow fires now like you did back in the 80s and 90s.
No, you don't.
That was a problem.
But my thing is the testing part, though, right? Because essentially, if I do have a business, right, and I am selling, cannabis to individuals in a free market, then where does the testing come in? Who's who? Because you don't want the population to get sick either with, over pesticides and harsh metals and mold and mildew, right? Because let's face it, not everybody like you and I can see mold on a plant and throw the plant away and take that loss. You know what I mean? Some people are still gonna try to package it up and sell it for the new fire.
Tomorrow's pre-rolls. Today's mold plants are tomorrow's pre-rolls.
Exactly. So I do believe that there should be some oversight to keep the market clean like that. But how do you?
So there's two answers. Like in if I'm just Joe Blow with a grow in my spot, that's my problem. That's my oversight. The point of we need to test becomes when you're selling any product to other people. So like in a perfect grow system, in a perfect legal system, you would be able, if you wanted to run a small to medium-sized grow, take that product and sell it to the public. There should be a licensing process and a regulatory process to make sure it's safe. But you just like if I brew my own beer and I want to send a homie in another state a 6-pack of my beer, there's no stress there.
True.
If I run a brewery and I want to have a party and I want to throw a party for my employees and I want to take 2 kegs of beer out of my system and I want to take them to the party and give them away to my employees, no paperwork.
True.
There's no federal paperwork you have to do per se. All you have to do is essentially say, on my bookkeeping end, I took these two out of the system. But you don't have to do anything as far as letting the state know, getting a separate permit to split it up and to move it, then getting a permit to transport it. None of that.
Right. Now here we can gift up to an ounce of flower for anyone over 21. No money can be involved. No services can be exchanged for it, right? But there's no oversight in it.
Just
right?
trade T-shirts for weed. That's always been the New York bodega shtick, right? That was my understanding. Was like it would be a spot that was selling T-shirts, and you paid the $100 for the T-shirt, and wrapped up in the T-shirt was the weed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's an old move. That's an old 70s head shop move. They used to do that shit in the 70s at the head shop. You go to the head shop and with a wink and a nod, and they'd like, yeah, man, that pipe is $85. And you're like, okay, cool, I got you. And in the bag was the weed.
I forgot what I was going to say. It's
Sorry.
It's gone.
Yeah, man, it's one of those things that, like, essentially in a perfect system, there would be an easy way for you to grow at home. There would be an easy way for you to have a small or medium-sized grow and to take that product commercial, whether it be to sell it to a larger entity like a dispensary or to sell it online, just like you would do any other product, right? That's where it's going to end up.
Duty?
How long it takes to get from here to there is the question.
I just want to be able to play, man. It's just something that I take serious. I love being in the garden. I love harvest time, and I love sharing my my biomass with people, right? But I don't like the fact that I can't profit off of it. You know what I mean? Where down the street, at the local dispensary, they're selling fucking candy eights for fucking $45 and $50. And
yeah.
Some shit's good, some shit's not. But.
So let me give you a point of advice, right? And this is kind of a point of advice that I've given to a lot of people in newly legal states where they're maybe not, they haven't figured out all the P's and Q's of legalization, right?
The governor just vetoed recreation.
First thing that generally happens is it becomes the lowest priority for law enforcement, which means, as you just kind of said, you can kind of transact an ounce between friends, no problem. Now, how the details of all of that are nobody's business, right?
Right.
So what you need to do, and I this is a cue that I took from a good friend, and this is a cue that I've passed on to other people, is it's about branding and marketing. It's about sticking with a brand. It's about longevity, especially in this industry. And it's about getting your product in front of people. So if you're able to do small regional cups and events, go to those events. Be a fixture at those events. People ask you about product. Be able to put product in front of them usually sells product. Once again, the details of all of that is nobody's business. At the end of the day, it's just about putting yourself out there in a way that's going to benefit you on the market side, but also marketing yourself so that people see your brand, instantly recognize your brand, and then talk about your brand elsewhere. That's the best thing you can do. To think that it's going to have to take 50 state legalization before you do that, there's too many people doing it right now.
Right.
There's too many examples of it working right now. So the truth is you just need to get in. You need to get your brands, which you've done a great job of. Get your brands, get your marketing, and then it's just putting up content. It's just constantly putting out pictures, constantly putting out work, whatever that is, whatever your work is, whether you're in the hash biz, whether you're in the seed biz, whether you're in the flower biz, it's about branding, marketing, and putting your product in front of people. It's basic business stuff, man. But the thing is, most of us aren't particularly business-minded people. Like, I tell people everything I learned about business, I learned on lot. Like, I learned wooking it up back in the day. Like, you learn all the hustle on the ground. And then it all just comes down to transferring that into whatever we're talking about right now, whether it's, the weed market, the hash market, the seed market,
For sure.
And it's just, that's the same thing big companies are doing, man. The best thing you can do is look at entities that are successful and figure out what they're doing right. So if it's like you look at big cannabis companies, he goes, well, they grow dank weed. Why do you think that? Because they put up great pictures, because they just have good photography, like
No,
things
it's
like that
marketing.
go a long way. Yeah.
It's
And
it's a prominent rapper, doing a promo for him, and it's we don't see commercials,
hey,
but
that's all paid for, right? Just so
yeah,
everybody understands, the whole rapper weed game is all paid for. The notion
yep,
that ASAP Rocky just loves your weed company is just going to shout you out is silly. That's not
hmm
how this works. Cat gets 40, 50 in the bag in the back door, walks straight out the back with it, does a 38-second promo, just made
and
his
walks
bag.
out the door for real.
Everything in this industry, if you see a weed company and you see their product, there's a reason. It's because they're spending ad dollars. If you see cookies everywhere, the reason you see cookies everywhere is because they are one of the largest spenders of ad dollars in the cannabis space, period. It's the biggest brand because they're spending the most money. It's not the
Facts.
biggest brand because they have the best weed or the most weed or the most prolific weed. It's because they spend the most on ad space. And anybody can do that. Like spending money on ads. If you go to Instagram or Facebook ads right now, you can look at how much it costs just to have your ad run for a week, 2 weeks,
Right.
3 weeks. The thing that we don't talk about is everybody does that. That's advertising, and that's how you build a business.
You have
But
to. If you're
yeah.
not playing in cyberspace as well, trying to take over cyberspace, you're losing. Because we can't put commercials on TVs, right? I mean, well, cookies can because they sell merch, right? They can advertise a shirt, they can advertise a hat, on TV. But do you know what they're really advertising? Hey, where the brand, come to the shop,
See, when I see cookies, I don't even think weed. When I see those brands in the store, that doesn't immediately make me think weed. It makes me think branding. It makes me think advertising. Like you said, cookies is a clothing brand to me
right.
more than it's a weed brand. Because when you think about
bro,
it, licensing.
You and I are immersed in cannabis. Like this is our life.
Right.
We had a podcast talking about this shit. The average consumer that walks inside of a store and sees cookies thinks weed. And then what's so even crazy, they think of the strand cookies, which they're totally different.
Right.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would be honest, I would say up until maybe 5 years ago, I assumed cookies and cookies were the same. No. I think Berner took a popular strand at the time and called his brand Cookies and rode the wave.
He's not a grower. He's not a grower. Let's just be clear too. Berner is a rapper. And I don't mean this in a pejorative sense. I don't mean this in a rude sense. He is a low-tier, very unknown rapper. He is not a commercial weed grower. He's not a commercial breeder. He's not even a farmer, the best I can tell. There are other people clearly behind the genetic side of what they generally call Cookies Fam. But once again, man, it's a marketing company. It's all about selling you a dream.
I don't think it's hidden. I think it's there for people who want to know. Like, again, someone like you and I that's immersed into the industry, we go find documentaries, and Berner will bring out his grower and let you know, hey, this is the grower, X, Y, Z. But for the everyday consumer that buys, Mylar packs off the street, you know what I mean? They believe Berner is a grower, knows about weed, X, Y, and Z. Now, I would be lying if I said I don't think he knows about weed. I don't know if he grows.
He seems pretty knowledgeable. He seems pretty knowledgeable, but his raps are whack.
Think when we think about the industry and we think about weed, right? We think about Wiz Khalifa, Snoop Dogg, Berner, and maybe one other, right? Well, all those people are just known for really smoking weed. You know what I mean? They're not known for what we do daily, or put the grind in to where you can even have that fire cultivar to smoke.
Right.
I think it's people like you and I that should be, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
But hey, that's because
bro, it's the other thing that I always hate to talk about. Like, I hate calling that dude a rapper because the reality is, if you're in any way ever involved in rap in any genre of the last 30 years, it's rare if you know that dude's name attached to rap. I couldn't tell you a song, an album. I couldn't tell you a lick, a rhyme. I couldn't tell you a thing. The dude makes music for people that I'm just not aware of. But I gotta be honest, like I don't know anybody bumping his shit in a club. I don't know anybody.
How many times you got in the car for a road trip and one fucker be like, "Yo, throw that burner on"? Nope.
I've never heard any of his music, dog. And I've listened. I've seen him in the scene for 15 years now, 10, 15 years now, whatever.
He got this one fucking track though that I absolutely fucking love. When he says, I put it on my stories a couple of times. The motherfucker says, "They say that money don't grow on trees, but homie, I disagree. Follow me, you can see." That's the only song I know.
You're doing better than I am, dog. I could not have named. And listen, dog, I'm an old school hip hop head. Like back to the mid '90s. I've listened to just about everything that comes out. I can't name any of that dude's stuff. You did better than I did because it's just not something I really listen to, man. And to be honest, I still know him more as a marketing face than I know him as like a rapper, a musician. He's great at branding. I will not hate at that. The dude is a marketing genius because he's made a ton of money marketing. I don't really know what really low grade rap. Like he's a great marketing company, branding. Cookies, the label is beautiful. Sell 1 billion of those little envelopes on wish.com, but like, no connoisseur is stressing anything that company does. I just don't think that's the case.
Nah. So what else we got, man?
What's up?
Well, I said, what else we got?
I don't know, man. You said last time we needed to take some questions, but I don't see a ton of them.
Yeah, me either. Not.
I actually got lots of chat in the chat though.
What else can I say? So why we got to pause, man? How's the Camera Great Donuts going for you?
Looks good. Looks healthy. I still don't know if I'm ready to say what it's going to be part of because it's going to be pretty epic. Some kind of new stuff project that I'm working on. I want to give a little bit more space before I'm ready to make a full announcement. Like I'll tell you, like off cam, I'll tell you what I'm working on. And I may have, to be fair, anybody that pays enough attention to me, I'm terrible at keeping secrets.
Yeah, but it'll come out slowly on the shows.
Yeah, it'll come out on the shows. Or I'll just be up late one night and somebody will ask me a question and I'm half asleep, like falling asleep watching reels at the end of the night. And somebody will send me something and I'll just answer them because I don't think twice about it. But yeah, the next thing that I'm working on, it's hash oriented essentially, with the real goal towards hash plants. But it's, here's the funny thing, man. Like once you're a breeder, and you're somewhat established, there's this perception that you should only work with your own gear, right? And I don't really, anybody that's followed me for any reasonable amount of time knows, I don't really ascribe to this. Like I work with a lot of breeders' gear, but I generally tend to work with males that I make, right? At the end of the day, I've only made so many different strains. I still try to find strains outside of my bubble that aren't necessarily mine that I still want to work with. So what I'll do is I'll make a line and now I can pull males from the cross that I made, so that's kind of the next project, a little bit more snitching on myself, but there's something big coming up and it's something I've been working on for a little bit. It's something I've had an eye on for a little while. And when I make an announcement, I think it's going to be some of my craziest strains hash-wise to date. Yeah.
Nice. I'm excited. I'm excited. I hope,
but yeah, here's what's funny, though. It took so long for me to get the caramel grape donuts into a rotation and to get it in and working with it. But once I did, the project that I ended up picking for it could very well just end up being legendary. So it was definitely worth the wait. Nothing in my world happens quickly. The smallest thing in my world feels like I'm turning a cruise ship, It's got to have a wide berth and everything takes some planning and some thought. And, I'll run it by 5 people in my life first. And what do you think? And what are you thinking? eventually when I land, I tend to like to think that what ends up in that batch for the next round always is predestined, you know?
Well, I'm excited to see you finally get to work with the Caramel Grape Donuts if it makes the cut. I'm sure it will.
Oh yeah, it
And
looks great. You'll
I
look
hope
great.
I hope it brings you as much joy as it brought me, man. Caramel Grape Donuts was one of my first, I guess, standout strands, in my opinion. I started in Spain, and it followed me all the way back to America, so it's special to me too. I started Caramel Grape Donuts when I was in the military, bro, which makes it even more special because I was doing some shit I wasn't even supposed to be doing, just for the love and the passion of the plant.
Right.
So to see you finally growing it, man, like I said, if it makes the cut or not, I got
Yeah.
somebody that's considered, one of the top breeders in the game to actually grow my here. So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you and appreciate that, man.
Oh, bro, I will say I still need to do some digging just because the link you sent me was interesting. When you sent me the seed finder to it,
Mhm.
I'm always interested in seeing genetics that I'm not familiar with, and that's not to say like things that aren't hype or aren't important or aren't relevant. It's
Mhm.
just even when you dedicate your whole life to genetics, to the language of genetics, to learning as many strains and memorizing as many strains as you can, you still can't really, you don't know everything. There's always something outside of your periphery. Even when this is all you do 24/7, there's still
Mhm.
stuff that's just outside of your periphery. So anytime I see strains that I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of that. That's awesome. Like it's interesting to me because
So
it's something new.
the Saint Vincent Blackbeard, and it is that comes from my homie Pablo side, bro. There's a lot of Caribbean strands in there, bro.
Nice.
Um, and he works. If you look at Pablo's page, he works with land races a lot. He's like a land race guy. Like I remember for saying thank you for helping me curate the Caramel Grape Donuts. He was mentioning that he wanted the Cali Brown from Land Race Mafia. So I ended up copying it for him and sent it to him. He immediately start working it. F2'd it, open pollination. After that, just So he has a strand called GFY, stands for Go Fuck Yourself. I'll let him tell that story one day on how he came up with that. But it's in the caramel donuts, man. So I promise those terps would be something you probably I wouldn't say never tasted because you smoked a lot of weed, but it would be definitely something old school reminiscent for you, man. That sweet artificial grape gas, man. Just
I like it. I like it. Yeah,
stacks.
I'm into different, man, and that's the thing. Like, so when I dabble in land races, if I dabble in land races, I like it to be something that's already been worked to some degree. So like something that has the inclusion of land race, but not something that's exclusively a land race situation. Just because, and I think it just goes back to the fem thing with me. Like it's just not my passion to work with like long flowering, really difficult, strains that have been bred for outdoors. There's just certain things in this industry and certain lanes that like I understand that it exists, but it's just not my, what gets me going and stoked. And it's like sometimes I like to benefit from those projects. So I'll always admit, like, I love unique flavors. So if I can find something that's like land race adjacent that has amazing flavor, I'll fuck with it. Or if I
Yeah.
find something that's like that, but just has gigantic heads, yeah, I'll fuck with it. But it's almost never the actual land race strain. Like I said, I tend to dabble in land race adjacent.
Yeah.
I'll get close, but I'm not. I just don't
Bro,
have a
I
patience.
I grew the Cali Round. He like I said, he F2'd them and he opened pollination and he sent something back to me. And to me, still, bro, I was like, bro, this takes work, bro. Like I don't want to have to look through all this. Like there's a lot of suck ass phenos here, bro. Like I didn't like it. I don't like land races, bro. Like it has to be an established, like a Durban poison that's been worked and worked and worked. I mean, I don't even know if you can consider it a land race anymore, right? But what I was gonna say, what I want to warn you is with the caramel grape donuts, bro. She doesn't grow vertically. she can get tall if you let her give her time, but she likes to bush out, bro. Like when I tell you she spreads out and she becomes like girthy, like sitting
That
on
hasn't
both poles.
the one that I got hasn't. I mean, it's not stretchy. Like it's not like throwing 3 or 4 branches and then just up. But I would say, compared to a bunch of other different structures, I'd say it's probably going to be a medium height plant. It doesn't seem super lanky, but it doesn't give me those like Master Kush, old world Kush vibes of like, 6 weeks into veg and you've only got a couple inches and it's all just bushy, leafy growth. It does look on the shorter side, but it doesn't look like something that I think is going to be like stuck to the pot,
Internodal spacing is amazing on that plant too. Her nodes alternate, but they're all like close together, which I like because that tends to make a huge bud at the end of the flowering cycle, man. So she really dids flowers and very super frosty, man. I can't wait till you put her in flower, bro. I guarantee you're gonna be blowing my fucking DM up with bitches. Hey, bro, check her out.
You're gonna, I mean, like I said, I think I got a couple. I just gotta take some inventory. Somebody asked about the pooping line. Man, I feel like that's either your thing, and I hate to start a sentence like this, but it's either your thing or it's not. I think there's a growing number of people that are kind of stepping away from fruit eater weed. I've always said, man, I like to keep a little bit of everything around. So I'll keep some fruity stuff, some skunky stuff, some cushy stuff, some citrus stuff. I'll keep it all and hit it all one day at a time, But when it comes to the gas, when it comes to the kush, I understand that's generally an acquired taste for a lot of people. Some people love it. Some people love just old school funk, whether it's skunk, whether it's trashy, whether it's poopy. And then there's other people that just can't imagine wanting to smoke weed like that. And I appreciate both. Like I said, I love all flavors. There's only a couple flavors ever that I was like, I don't want to smoke that anymore. Please just get that away from me. Most stuff I'll hit just because I'm curious. Like I always want to try something, especially if it's a flavor or a strain that I've never tried. I'm super stoked to hit that. It doesn't matter what it is. I always say I'm not a big fan of like what I call the New World haze. So your Ghost Train haze. There's this thing between like Jack Hare, Ghost Train haze, and Golden Goat. I don't know if you know any of those 3 strains, but it's somewhere in between. It's very Jack Hare, like that whole thing, not my thing. And then Tangy, just the strain Tangy. Now, I've had some amazing Tangy crosses, but the strain itself, Tangy, to me tastes like orange peels and wet cardboard. And it's not a good thing. It just tastes nasty. It's not like I had a bad sample or a bad batch. Like I've grown those strains myself a few times, and it's just not for me. It's just not. It falls into that category of it ain't my taste. And so that's to the same thing with the pooping stuff, the gassy stuff, some of the cushy stuff. Like it's an acquired taste. But if you're kind of into the whole terpene color chart, the notion that you've got a little bit of experience on every flavor that's out there, you got to try it all. You got to try it all at some point, sure. And that might mean dabbling in some flavors that aren't your thing or that aren't really your particular bag. But at that point, you at least know, like, I'm not into that. Whatever that is, that's not for me, right? And it's like that comes from experience. That comes from trying a number of different flavors, sometimes ones you're not really into. And some people are super sensitive about smells and taste. Some people are just a lot more repulsed by certain smells and are a lot more attracted to other smells. So there are people that just don't want floral weed,
With the New World hazes, I get a flavor that I don't like particularly as much either. And again, it just might be my receptors in my body that pick up on this. But I get the rose petal flowery spice that I don't like. It's too floral for me. Like
when it gets too drier sheet, there's a point where like floral is good, but when you look at it and you go, did somebody rub some dryer sheets on this? There's a thing there that's just not great. It happened a few times back in the early days of making BHO, making butane shatter. Not me particularly, but like the community. You would get a batch and it would literally taste like dryer sheets, right? And you'd ask somebody and the dude's like, well, yeah, I keep my vac oven in my laundry room. And it's like, you don't see the
correlation.
This is dryer sheet hash. There's dryer sheets in this hash. Like, that's what's going on here. And it's like that thing, I always associate that there's something wrong. Like it either something went wrong, something went sideways with the production, with the something, or somebody's trying to cover something up. Because I've seen some shady stuff too, where people spray stuff on weed because it doesn't have a smell or to make it smell.
I don't know if that's Drew, but poopine. So poopine is kind of like a terpene profile that kind of came up about.
No. It's a funny word to encompass all of the shitty smells, all of the poopy smells, all of the onion, all of the skunk. So there's so much of that stuff. Like when we're talking about floral,
it's not a real terpene.
It's not a real terpene. And it's not a real word. It's a completely manufactured word. It's it's literally a word I made up. And we were sitting around one day.
It was accepted.
Everybody picked up on it, so it just stuck around, and it's just become vernacular at this point. But we're sitting around dabbing, and when you're hitting fruity stuff and floral stuff, and that feels like terpenes. The word terpenes, that sounds like what you think of when you think terpenes. But when you get into some of the nastier smelling stuff, like scatol and stuff that literally has some poopy aroma, that doesn't feel like terpenes to me. That feels like something else, right? It just doesn't have that pleasant thing. And I understand none of this is scientific in any way, size, shape, or form. Talking out our ass. But it just didn't feel right for me to put nasty, skunky, poopy, diarrhea-smelling strains in the same category as floral and fruit. And so, the poopines became all of the negative, foul, bad, odorous, the terrible smells, and that became just under a kind of a title of poopines. And so when somebody asked how the poopine drop went, that essentially was the last line that I worked on that I released was the Royal Head Rush. The goal was largely to bring out some of those old school funk profiles, stinky, trashy, skunky, musty, everything non-fruity, right? And it was kind of in response to, I feel, a market change towards kind of less fruity strains, and people are kind of moving in a direction. And I just love funk. I just love old school, nasty, dank, chronic funk. Like the stinkier, the better. If your friends are afraid to get in the car with you, that's what I'm looking for. That's my joint right there.
That loud is what they call it, man.
You start to understand there's different levels to that volume, that loud volume knob.
For sure.
But
I hope that answers your question, bro. Poopy.
But yeah, man. So the new stuff that I'm working on is it's the first time I've probably gone into a drop or into a batch without a distinct terpene profile in mind. It's one of the first times where I was like, I had specifically another goal in mind, which is just straight resin. It's just absolute resin, fatheads, hash plants. That's it. That's number one focus. And then the thing is, what I can do is I can take those strains and then start to go in different terpene directions, different flavor directions off of that. Once you already have strains that breed well for hash, now you can just bang that in all kinds of different directions and bring out different terpene profiles and flavors.
For sure. I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what comes about.
Yeah, the caramel grape donuts is going to fit right in. It'll be a good one. And so here's the other thing that I haven't really mentioned to anybody. So I'm sure you've seen the guys at Leapfrog. I post tons of their stuff. Jacques in South Africa runs Leapfrog Genetics, and those guys have been working with the Nag Champa forever. I mean, he's had it for some years now, and I've probably had more people find out about that strain through him than through me. Like they talk it up. They always post it. They grow some of the most beautiful Nag Champa plants I've ever seen in my life. And so within the last couple of years, he and I do a little trade here and there. It's always tough, man. Anybody that sends stuff around the world knows Africa in general is a tough place when it comes to their postal system. With just getting stuff to show up. I tell people all the time about a couple of years back, I had a package coming, just seeds, an innocuous envelope of seeds coming from Africa. It arrived 18 months after it was postmarked. I had long given up, and it just showed up one day.
That's what I was going to tell you. Yep.
Anyway,
be ready.
I sent him seeds years ago. He sent me stuff. We've both worked with each other's work. I think I essentially sent him a bunch of stuff back when I was first working with the pineapple sorbet, probably 2017, 18, and he's been working with it ever since. So I now have the Champa Rose, which is their rose heavy pheno of the Nag Champa, as well as their Nag Champa Guru G, which is another one that they've been huge and talking about. Just really dank stuff. I will say, people running my gear most consistently, those guys post up some of the best looking pictures, but some of the best quality photographs of any of my work. And, aside from some that I've taken of my own stuff, but it's one of those things that they are passionate about the work they're doing. They tag me probably 8 times a week between them, people that they're working with, people that promote their stuff. So they're always talking up the Nag Champa, and it's become one that, I think in the next couple of years is going to be a much bigger strain, worldwide. Because those guys
what are their growing techniques?
What's that?
What are their growing techniques? Like, how are they growing it?
I'm off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure, and I would hate to speak for them. I know they do run some pretty big greenhouses out there for South Africa. I'm not sure what the legalization situation is out there, but they're doing fairly big things, and their grows look great. Like they look great.
Nice. And those are the pictures you be posting?
A lot of them. A lot of the Nag Champa pictures you see on my page come from work that they do. Yeah. And see, they have one. I think they have a couple phenos that they still work with, but the one that's gotten the most attention has been that one that they say I'm still testing out. They say smells just like roses.
Nice. Long as it don't have that dryer sheet.
Nah, no dryer sheets. No dryer sheets. Nah. Let's be honest. Dryer sheets don't really smell like anything real. They smell fake. Like it smells artificial when you smell it. Whereas when you smell a rose, it's a very unique thing. But it's not something that you associate with fake. Like when you start talking, it's the same with candy, right? If we're talking about grapes, the profile of grapes, a handful of grapes, and grape candy or grape soda, not same. Not the same. And it's I had one the other day. Somebody was asking me about one of the Lucky Charms crosses, the Big Payback, I think. And I said, listen, it's fruit, but it's fruit. It's not fruity candy. And that's becoming a big difference now you have to make, because I've got the pineapple sorbet, which is heavy candy, pineapple. Like you said, I've run a bunch of strains that are candy grape. Like that's an old school one that's been around for years and years and years and years. But you have to differentiate. Like for some strains, it's more smells like fruit than smells like fruity candy, fake, that loud candy terp that everybody wants these days. That's a big one now.
For sure. And I think that's a staple, bro. Like people associate that now more than ever with good weed, that candy profile now.
Yeah.
it does get played out sometimes, you know.
It's just a market, man. It's just a moment in the market. Here's what everybody doesn't realize. All of these trends have been around before, and it all kind of comes around and goes around. And a lot of it circulates around the fact that we always have these new states that are legalizing. So now there's new places where people can try different flavors, and now all this new state just goes legal, and now there's 2 million new people that can now try that blue dream they've been seeing about and hearing about. I just realized I think we're real close to getting cut off.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool.
Somebody said just transplanted the nag champa out back this morning. One of the healthiest plants.
It's a special plant. It's a special plant, man. It's a special plant. Outdoors, I'd love to see what you do with it. I've seen some outdoors. I think that pineapple sorbet is one of those old school strains that's generally bred from outdoor legacy California genetics. And a lot of the stuff that I started working with when I started working with seeds, that was a priority, was to work with like old school stuff that I could get my hands on in seed form that was being sold in the open market. So when you go back and look at a lot of the genetics behind a lot of the strains that I work with, there's strains that have pedigree. And that's not necessarily always because of work that I did. I didn't do 40 years of breeding a lot of these strains. But when I started, that was a priority for me, was finding stuff that had, you know, breeding behind
history.
It, had legacy and pedigree behind it. And there's California, Northern California has always been a place that puts out amazing genetics. When we go back and look in history, it's going to be one of the points that put tons of genetics into the market long term. And yeah, to work with some of those legacy strains from that area was a no-brainer for me. And so when you look at the Long Valley Royal Kush, when you look at what's in the sorbet, when you look at some of these strains, you go, oh, well, these are all older strains that were super well bred long before I started working with them. And I just happened to have made really good selections when I started working with stuff. And I don't have a ton of problems in my gear for whatever reason. You know, like I don't work with a lot of just fly-by-night hype stuff. I tend to work with stuff that has some, you know, genetic pedigree behind it. Yeah, and then it makes working with other newer stuff easier too, because I know how these strains behave. I've been working with them for years, and now I know what to expect. I know what kind of resin output I'm going to get. I know what kind of production, like flower production, I'm going to get. And so, you know, it makes my job 10 times easier because I didn't just start with 2 hype strains. I started with strains that were well-bred legacy strains in whatever it is, you know, whatever crosses I'm working with.
For sure. Yeah, man. That's the way we do our breeding over here, and I'll make this short and wrap it up, is we select things that have similar qualities, bro. We might see this in the grandparents. We might see that in the parents and think that, hey, if we can bring more of that out that's been proven to be a good strain into our own variation of it, will be pretty dope. And yeah, so it is about, when you're breeding, bro, you have to look at the gene pool, man. You got to know what you add and what you're subtracting, you know what I mean? But Terpene, we got 2 minutes, man. Where can they find you?
www.terpfiend.com, terpfi3nd.com, or you can find me on Instagram, terpfiend_genetics. What about you, man?
Man, you can find me at the Business is Blooming podcast, as you see the logo top right. On Instagram, you can also find me on YouTube, Mr. Mac Blunts, but everything is the link in my bio. Tap the link, tree in my bio, and it'll take you to all my different pages.
Y'all have a good week.
Peace.